Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Boots on the Ground. My name is Karen Matroni. I am the founder of Boots on the Ground. And today we are going to learn about bootlickers and billionaires. So let's get started. Next slide, please. We're going to get started with our mission statement. Boots on the Ground was created to bring all members of the leather, fetish, and kink communities together to fight against the tyranny and oppression taking over the United States. We will fight to retain our inalienable rights given to us by the U.S. Constitution. We will educate ourselves to know how our democracy works. We will make calls, attend commission meetings, protest, march, create community, and build connections. Democracy will not die while we watch. We will fight, and we will win. Next slide, please. I like to do a land acknowledgement. I know this is primarily performative, but I want us to recognize that we reside on stolen land, and I feel it's important for us to recognize the indigenous First Peoples that lived on this land. Boots on the Ground recognizes that we reside on lands once inhabited and held sacred by the First Peoples. For nearly 10,000 years, indigenous groups lived in South Florida. The Tequesta, Miccosukee, Seminole, Muskogee, and Taino peoples once lived in what we call Broward County. These distinct indigenous communities were among many others in South Florida considered ancestors of the present-day federally recognized Seminole Tribe of Florida and Miccosukee Tribe of Indians of Florida. I encourage all to learn about the significance of the early inhabitants. With a collective knowledge of the past, we are inspired to teach, to live, and to support a future that empowers all individuals. Next slide, please. The Lace Up and Learn weekly newsletter, it just went out this morning. If you want to stay up to date on what's going on in American politics, but you don't want to be tied to the 24/7 news cycle, and I get it, trust me, I know, go ahead and sign up for Lace Up and Learn. I give short, easy to digest paragraphs on all the top news stories of the week. I try to give some hope and inspiration, some wins, and I also tell you where you can act and get involved, if it's by a call, a sign a petition, or even going to a protest. So go ahead and sign up. It's botgfl.com or use the QR code in the slide. And then I would like to go and thank the people that are on the Boots on the Ground team. So in the Eagle, Wilton Manors, we have Will and Sylvie helping with the Zoom. Thank you. Infinity Angel, thank you so much for being in my body bag last night and for running the Zoom. Big John hosts our website. Thank you. Allie does all my graphics. Thank you, Allie. And then, of course, Chuck and Greg here at the Eagle Wilton Manors for allowing us to have the classes here. Thank you. All right, next slide, please. Bootlickers and Billionaires, the new order. All right. Welcome, freedom fighters and armchair revolutionaries. This is Bootlickers and Billionaires, the new order. I'm your guide through the wild world of governments and economies, because if I called this class Government and Economies, you wouldn't have come. But it's extremely important to learn about these systems because we live under them and work under them and die under them every day. So it's really important to know how these systems work. This is not going to be a boring class. We're going through it. Stick with it. With the U.S. teetering on the edge of authoritarianism, now is the time to learn about these systems of government and economic systems. We're going to connect the dots. We are going to look at this as a crash course. We are going to learn some facts, we're going to learn some history, and we're going to learn about the modern systems of government and economy. We're going to start with the government systems, then we're going to go into a few wild cards, and then we're going to go into systems of economy. We're also going to talk about how America right now is eerily echoing pre-World War II Germany, and what we can do to stop this rise towards authoritarianism and downright fascism. Next slide, please. Oh, that's the welcome. Next slide. All right, part one, governments. Who is calling the shots? So a government is like an operating system for your computer. Sometimes it runs real smoothly, you don't even know it's there. Other times it crashes, and other times it spies on you 24/7. So let's see what kind of governments we've got here. We're going to cover the big ones: democracy, monarchy, fascism, authoritarianism, and a few wild cards like I mentioned before. We're going to talk about the descriptions of each of these systems, a few history takes, and where they pop up in the major and the middle powers. Next slide, please. All right, we are going to start with democracy because that's what we're willing to protect, aren't we? We want to protect democracy because, for me, I think it's probably the best system within reason and with some safeguards, and we're going to talk about that. So picture this: about 500 BCE, you have ancient Greeks wearing togas, because that's what they wore back then, and they were in the agora, the shopping mall, and they were arguing. Well, democracy was born from this. People came and argued together. It was one person, one vote. That's direct democracy in action. One person, one vote. Now, because we don't have such a small society anymore, we have evolved to representative democracies, which is what the US is. We elect folks to argue for us. The pros of the democratic system are that freedom, we have checks and balances, and we don't have a king telling us what to do. The cons: gridlock, fake news, and billionaires buying elections, or the free press. And that's one that should be very concerning, because without a free press, we cannot have a democracy. Democracy is kind of like a group chat, is everybody talks and then nothing gets done until about 3 a.m. the day before. And that's kind of what democracy is. We have to work across the aisle. We have to work together in order to get anything done. And when that doesn't happen, like we're seeing in the US Congress right now, we get gridlock and we get nothing done. America's founding fathers in 1787 borrowed from Enlightenment thinkers like John Locke, and they wanted to create a republic with democratic flair. The United States has a constitutional federal republic. That is actually our system of government. It's often described as a representative democracy or a democratic republic, but they're all the same thing. And what we think of when we're talking about democracy in the US is the constitutional federal republic. A republic operates with democratic principles like elections and popular sovereignty. In political science, a republic emphasizes representative rule, the rule of law, and often protections against pure majority tyranny, like through a constitution or a Bill of Rights. That's why we're a constitutional federal republic, because of our constitution. Modern republics frequently combine democratic elements, so you get a democratic republic where each citizen votes for their representatives. However, today, voter suppression and gerrymandering are turning us into democracy light, or in other words, towards authoritarian slide. Next slide, please. Oh, I forgot that one. Sorry. Next slide. All right, now we should be on the monarchy slide. Crowns, drama, and family feuds. It is the OG power structure. This has been going on, kings and queens ruling by divine right since ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. Absolute monarchies, which are like total boss mode in a video game, versus constitutional ones where the king or queen is more of a figurehead and parliament enacts the rules and laws. In history, we look at England's Magna Carta in 1215 as the start of curbing monarchy's powers. King John threw tantrums. Does it sound like any leader we know today? And they thought it might be a good idea to curb some of that and put in some safeguards to unlimited absolute monarchical power. It's like inheriting a family business, which goes well if you have a good heir apparent. But if crazy Uncle Eddie is the one that inherits the crown, you're in for a world of hurt. The pros, stability and tradition. The cons, nepotism and zero mediocrity. If you are really good at your job, you can never become king. It just won't happen. Major powers. Saudi Arabia is an absolute monarchy. They have been oil rich since 1932, ruled by the House of Saud. And it's kind of like Game of Thrones, but with camels. So it's a little bit of that vibe. The UK, as we know, as most people know of as a monarchy, is actually a constitutional monarchy where the monarch is just a figurehead and parliament runs the country. Interestingly, Japan's emperor is the longest continuous running monarchy, but it's purely symbolic post-World War II. Which makes sense. All right, next slide. Authoritarianism. This is the one we're worried about. It's like big brothers hugging you, but just squeezing a little too tightly. Enter the control freaks. These are the people that want to control what you do, what you say, what you think, who you are. Authoritarianism is a rule by a strong leader or the elite and with limited freedoms. You don't really have real, fair, and free elections. You have heavy censorship. You have secret police. All I have to say is CBS, Paramount, all that's going on with the censorship of the news. ICE as a potential secret police force. Actually, I'm not even saying potential, as an actual secret police force disappearing people. And Trump is trying his hardest not to get us any real elections. So we have to be vigilant. The history of authoritarianism is started in Rome under dictators. Modern 20th century, we tend to prefer strongmen for our authoritarian rule. It's like democracy's evil twin. It promises order, but delivers paranoia, fear, and repression. The pros, quick decisions, because if you don't have to work with a government, you can just decide to do whatever you want to do. The cons, dissenters vanish. You have no more rights to freedom of speech. You cannot criticize your government or you will disappear. All right, the major powers right now, China, under CCP rule since 1949. Xi Jinping is the forever president and really amps up that authoritarian vibe. Russia has been Putin's playground since 1999, and they blend elections with very strong, deadly crackdowns on political opposition. That's what authoritarian looks like. I'm sure you've seen in the news poisonings in Russia. I don't think people just die of natural poisonings in Russia. I think they're all government sponsored. Middle powers that are authoritarian is Turkey. Erdogan, shifted from democracy to authoritarianism post a 2016 coup. And that's the same thing that's happened time and time again. We've had a democratic form of government, an authoritarian coup takes over.
What's a coup?
A coup is when one system of government is overthrown and another is installed in its place. So kind of like what happened on January 6th when they tried to stop the certification of our election. That was an attempted coup. They were trying to overthrow the government. As much as Trump doesn't want you to think that, that's what really happened. So America's current authoritarian drift can be seen through the executive overreach by all these executive orders he's putting out, loyalty oaths, getting rid of the government rank and file and replacing them with Trump loyalists, and media attacks. I'm going to mention CBS and Paramount again. It's echoes of how Mussolini consolidated power in 1920s Italy, and that led us to the rise of, next slide, fascism. We throw this word around a lot in progressive circles. You know, fascists. Let's talk about the difference between authoritarianism and fascism. Not a lot, but there are some elements. Fascism is ultranationalism, militarism, suppression of opposition, and it often has a charismatic dictator. And this is born in Italy under Mussolini in 1919, post-World War I economic chaos. Fascism was going to save them from the communists. They used communism as the boogeyman, as people like to do. We like to other people and get them on our side. Those communists can't take over if we're fascists. Hitler adopted fascism for Nazism in the 1930s. He blended racism and total control. Now, the way he blended racism into fascism for his Nazi rule was actually taken from the US South. The Jim Crow laws of the day were a model for Hitler on how to treat immigrants, Jews, and anybody he did not agree with personally, politically, or morally, if Hitler actually had morals. He used American policy for Nazism. I want you to let that sink in and tell you where we came from in the US and why it's so important to keep fighting against racism and oppression here in the United States. Because I don't want another fascist wannabe dictator to take the rule of law from what Trump's doing right now. But I know that's exactly what they're doing around the world. We need to stop it. We need to stop it now. All right. Let's talk about the pros of fascism. There's not really any pros. It's all propaganda. Genocide, wars, and what rights? Those are the cons. You don't have any rights under fascism. What you have is a war machine because fascism thrives on division and dissent. And war is very profitable for a certain amount of the economy. That's quite telling today since we just went and bombed Iran again with Israel yesterday. It is another indicator that we are sliding into an authoritarian and even a fascist form of government. All right. Current, no major powers claim fascism as as a system of government. It's too on the nose. However, Hungary under Orban has been nationalist policy since 2010, which has eroded their democracy. We're going to circle back to America's parallels soon, and we're going to talk about the rising nationalism and the cult of personality that Trump has. All right, next slide. All right, I want to ask, who is your boss most like? Are they a democratic leader where they take input from everybody and they make decision what's best for the group or society? Are they more a fascist where you have no rights and you are just a number, a drone, and a worker to them? Authoritarian. Do they maybe take all the credit for your work and then push you aside? So I'm sure all of us have had bosses like all these systems of governments in the past. I really, truly hope that all of us get the democratic ones as much as possible. Next slide. All right, we're going to talk about a few lesser known systems of government. One, we have heard this term a lot as well, oligarchy. Oligarchy is ruled by elites. Ancient Sparta was an oligarchy. Russia, modern Russia, although they are a communist system of economy, they really have the authoritarian vibe. But the oligarchy in Russia, the billionaires in Russia, control a lot of what goes on in Russia as well. And it is really happening in the United States as well when we see how much dark money, billionaire money, is poured into our elections. All right, next, theocracy. This is God rules via priests. Iran, since 1979's Islamic Revolution, interestingly, that was one of my examples today, they have had a theocracy. So now that the Ayatollah Khomeini has been killed, there's a power vacuum, and we have no idea what's going to go on in Iran. But until yesterday, they were a theocracy. And then the third one, I see a lot of people are like, anarchy, anarchy. You don't want to live under anarchy because you know what? You can't drive down the road. You can't live without somebody trying to kill you. You can't buy food. You can't do anything safely and effectively because if we don't have a government and some rule of law, things aren't going to get done. Somalia in 1991 lived under an anarchy system for a while. I'm sure anybody saw Captain Phillips or the Somali pirates knows about this because they were living with no rules and no restraints on their behavior. And I don't think anybody really wants that. All right, next slide. We are going to move into economic systems. Economics and economies are the engines that drive the government systems, and those drive society. Governments often pair with an economic system, but they're mix and match. We're going to go through capitalism, socialism, communism, and hybrids. History, descriptions, and where they thrive, powers big and small. So let's hustle. Because first, we're going to go to the next slide. And we're going to talk about the original hustle culture, capitalism, free markets, private ownership, and a profit motive. Those are the hallmarks of capitalism. Adam Smith wrote Wealth of Nations in 1776. And it was, one of the things he talked about is the invisible hand. The invisible hand is that when people act in their own self-interest in a free market, they often end up benefiting society as a whole, even though that's not their goal. Now, this is a beautiful fantasy. But as we all know and see, more is never enough for some people. And working towards your own interests tends to happen with law breaking. So we need, in a system of capitalism, checks and balances on those companies that want to exploit and destroy the working class. And that is what a capitalist system runs on. Capitalism is kind of like that friend who tells you to pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and they're over there wearing designer boots and sipping a $10 latte. Capitalism makes you think anybody can achieve it. But if you combine capitalism with oligarchy, and where billionaire Epstein class people are taking over, guess what? There is not a way to the top in those upper echelons, because they have cut off your ability to move up the ladder. The pros is that there is innovation with capitalism. Don't get me wrong. Profit motive is a great innovation motive. It's also wealth creation. Because when the Industrial Revolution happened, capitalism was turbocharged. Everything took off. And what happened is that we started seeing systems of production concentrated in the hands of a few. Today, I would say Mark Zuckerberg, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. Those are the names we hear about now, where capitalism has led to rampant billionaire, maybe even a trillionaire class. And there should not be a thing of a trillionaire class. That should not be a thing. The major powers are the US, which is a pure-ish capitalist system, but we have regulations in place. Trump is trying to destroy those regulations one by one, so his billionaire cronies can destroy the working class and the environment again. But hey, we're capitalists. The middle powers, South Korea, post-1950s. And interestingly, China has a socialist market economy. All that is a capitalist system with communist frosting. They like to say they have a communist system. They do not. It's actually capitalist. So China, who's the biggest communist power we can think of, not really. Next slide, please. Socialism. So the defining characteristics of socialism are its government or collective ownership of production, and it aims for equality. The history of it, utopian roots, because socialism is a utopian ideal. I would love to live under a utopian socialist economy, but utopian ideals aren't really able to be transferred into real life. 19th century thinkers like Owen and muckraking journalist Upton Sinclair, who wrote The Jungle and King Cole, were staunch advocates of socialism. Socialism is the group project where everybody contributes and no one slacks off. And that's really great in theory, but in practice, not so realistic. The pros of a socialist system: social safety nets, less inequality. The cons: bureaucracy and potential inefficiency, because you have a lot of social systems that are helping people run their lives, so you need to have government systems in place to make sure all the people get the services they need. The cons, America, like I said, we try to say we're capitalists. We have a lot of social safety nets. We have unemployment insurance. We have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. These are all social systems that are in place that help everybody. The major powers that have socialism as their system of economy, there are none that are pure socialist, But there are two Nordic models, Sweden and Denmark, that come the closest. They blend it with capitalism, but they lean more towards the social welfare and social good side. Middle powers that have a socialist economy are Vietnam since 1975, but they had market reforms like China does, so not pure socialism as well. Next slide, please. Communism. This is the ultimate equalizer, but it's never quite equal. Communism is a classless society, and the state owns everything. You don't even own your house or nothing. The state owns it all. And the classic phrase for communism is from each according to ability to each according to need. Marx and Engels did their manifesto in 1848, and it was sort of realized in the Soviet Union post-1917 revolution. Communism is like promising a pizza party and then showing up with plain bread, if bread at all. The pros, no billionaires, except Russia, of course. Cons, famines, and purges. Because when you have a dissenting populace, what do? You purge dissenters. So communist systems tend to have more purges because of this fact, because people don't like living under it. Major powers, China, as I said before, they claim communism, but it's really authoritarian capitalism. Cuba, since 1959, another one that we're looking to attack, so yay. And then North Korea. This is an extreme version. It has been under the Kim dynasty since 1948, but at this point, it's more a cult than communist. All right, next slide, please. All right, let's tie it all together. Americans' authoritarian tango and World War II echoes. This is the truth now. Why does this matter? Next slide. America is sliding towards authoritarianism. Trump is trying to centralize power in the executive branch, has eroded the institutions of our government by mass layoffs and people being bought out of their contracts. He has decimated the labor pool in the government. And the attacks on the free press and the strongman rhetoric. I'm going to lower crime and get rid of those immigrants. Fascism thrived on division, scapegoating, Jews then, trans people, and immigrants now. And it also has this cult loyalty. We all know the cult is named MAGA. Today, in 2026, there are U.S. parallels to authoritarianism. Voter laws restricting access. If you can, call your senator right after this class and tell them vote no on the SAVE Act. Because right now, Mitch McConnell is holding it over rules and will not call a vote on it, but it is the worst voter suppression out there right now. So call your senator, because it already passed the House. Also, the other parallels to authoritarianism in the U.S. right now. Loyalty over law in politics and on our streets. Economic inequity is breeding unrest. We are tired of the billionaire Epstein class, are we not? And this was just like Weimar Germany before Adolf Hitler came to power. There were so many things that were the same, but there are so many things that are different. We have 50 states. We have a decentralized locus of power. If California and New York stopped paying taxes, the US government would be in a problem. That would be a problem. There is power, so don't give up hope. All right, next slide, please. So in 1920s and 1930s Germany, there was super hyperinflation and depression because after World War I, Germany was saddled with so much war debt that they were just printing money and would have to have wheelbarrow full of money to buy anything. That's how bad the hyperinflation was. Hitler promised jobs and national pride. Make Germany great again. Sound familiar? Mussolini in Italy, he used fear of communism to grab power, and he suppressed dissent. And if you did not know, Trump's DOJ is trying to pressure all these companies, all these states into giving your voter information, your social media history. If you have said any bad things about ICE Online, know that that's what your government is trying to do right now. Next slide. As the slide says, democracy requires vigilance. Understand your systems. Understand what the word democracy really means and what our constitutional republic really is. It is important because if you don't know, how do you know what you're fighting for? If we don't do more now, we're going to slide further and further into an authoritarian and oligarchy rule of our country. And I don't want that. And I know if you're here, you don't want that either. You got to fight back with votes, with facts, and with your presence because you need to show up. Democracy will not die while we watch. All right, next slide, please. So, do we have any questions, comments, either here in the Eagle or on Zoom? If you're on Zoom, you can put it in the chat. Do we have anything, Will?
We have a question from somebody asking about vote no on what? I think that's regarding the
SAVE Act. What you were asking, vote no on the SAVE Act. Call your senators, your U.S. senator, and tell them if the SAVE Act comes up for vote to vote no on it. It is a voter suppression law. It would make you have to have your birth certificate or a passport in order to vote. And this is just a polling tax. So because these documents are hard, not everybody has them. And if you're a married woman and you've changed your name, you're going to have all your documentation. So please tell your friends, you call, use 5 calls. If you don't have the 5 calls app, download it and call your senator and say, vote no on SAVE. Even if you're in Florida like me and your senators are both ruby red, I still call. All right, do we have any other questions? We're good? All right. Well, let's go with the last slide. Anybody who's been to a boots on the ground class knows I like to end with this simple restorative chant. I feel that some of the things we talk about can be very heavy and very hard to hold. So I like to end each class with this. We sing it 3 times. Feel free to join in at home or here in the Eagle. And then we're going to end the class if nobody has questions. All right. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. Loosen, loosen, baby. You don't have to carry the weight of the world in your muscles and bones. Let go, let go, let go. And thank you, everybody. Do we have a question?
Yes, we have one from Scrub Down to Meeting Group Chat. It says, is there any benefit to writing your own statement to Congress when movements usually provide some sort of template to send? Not statements, but you get what I mean.
Letters. Yes, I understand exactly what you mean. If it makes you feel better, go ahead and do it. If you have a personal relationship with your representative or senator, absolutely, because those do stand out. However, if it is a massive issue like the SAVE Act, I suggest just using the pre-filled ones because they just have to count it. They mark tick marks, who's pro, who's against, and that's what they do. However, like I said, if you do have a personal relationship, take that extra minute and write a letter. But otherwise, I don't see anything wrong with using the pre-filled ones.
Podology asks, how can people find resources to know how they can combat voter suppression in November in effective ways that hopefully avoid running afoul of laws designed to restrict such assistance?
You know, one of the best ways to feel like you are doing something to counteract voter suppression is become a poll worker. If you are there, you see the system from the inside. Be a poll worker for a day. Take a day off work and be a poll worker. In other ways, the best way to do it is to counteract all these voter suppression laws that are trying to be passed, not just at the U.S. level, but at state levels as well, especially if you're in a red state. So be aware of what's going on in your state that is dealing with voter laws. You can usually, there are voting rights groups that follow these issues much more closely than I do. League of Women Voters is the one that comes to mind, but I know there are other voter rights groups, including the ACLU, who is always my #1 source for learning about voter suppression and other kinds of unjust laws.
Someone writes, Mistress M20 says, please contact www.rockthevote.org.
Rockthevote.org.
All info on getting organized.
Okay. Thank you.